Welcome everyone to my very first playthrough, walkthrough, commentary, let's play, of whatever you like to call them, of Sonic Lost World for the Nintendo Wii-U. This is Brandon the Random Gamer, also known as Sonic Gamer 12, on both Nintendo and PlayStation Network accounts. But yeah, Sonic Lost World for the Wii U. Some people love it, some people hate it, and some people like me before December didn't even know what to make of it, because they didn't have a chance to play the game. But thanks to the glory of Boxing Day sales, I managed to snag a Wii U with a couple of games for a pretty reasonable price. But yeah, for Sonic Lost World, I'm not going to jump deep into my opinion right this moment. You'll just have to see how it goes through this commentary. But I'd like to clarify, yes, this will be a 100% playthrough. So not only does that mean all the red rings, S ranks, but it also means the Omu Chow missions and those pointless RC car upgrade devices. But yeah, one small nitpick I'd like to say, actually, before we start off, is that it kind of sucks. This has been happening for more of the recent Sonic games. You can only use one save file per account user. This applied to also Unleashed, Generations, and the HD versions of Sonic 4. And I don't know why, but it kind of sucks because, you know, you can only, if you're a speedrunner or if you have a completionist file, you're not going to want to have to delete a file just to start a new game. So I'm using, as you can tell, Charlie Brown's account, but, you know, good grief, you know, I have to go to all that trouble of switching accounts just to start a new game. But anyways, here's the first cutscene of the game. I'm going to say this right now, this is my second favorite Sonic CG opening. The first obviously goes to Unleashed, but can you really blame me? But then it's really hard to beat that one. As you can tell, both Orbot and Cubot are back in this game, somehow surviving the endless void of space from Colors. But then again, how did Eggman escape from space? That doesn't really make sense either, but you know, I'm not going to really question that, because that's just going to keep me going for a very long time. Yeah, the graphics in this particular cutscene are amazing. At this current time of recording, I've actually been hearing rumors of them making a Sonic movie, licensed by Sony. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but you know, I'm all up for it, because if the graphics are this amazing, I definitely support a Sonic movie. Anyways, here we are, introduced to the Lost Hex. You'd think there'd be a reason why it's randomly in Sonic's world of Mobius, or whatever it's called these days. But, nope. It's just there for some reason, hovering in the sky, without much explanation. It's a little bit of a small issue of Sonic Lost World, both story-wise and gameplay-wise. The game fails to kind of explain on those kind of things. It's not necessarily bad, it's just, it could have been explained better in some ways. So if you're coming from Unleashed, Generations, or Colors, you're going to have a little bit of a hard time getting used to these new controls. And I'll say for me personally, this Sonic game in recent memory has been the hardest to get used to. It has a pretty big learning curve in the sense that there's a lot of new moves Sonic can do, but there's also some... the game doesn't really explain it well to the point where you understand how to do it when you first play it. Like, you know how in Generations you had Omu Chow following you, explaining the things, even though you probably already knew how to play the game? Yeah, you're gonna probably wish he was there telling you how to play and use these new kind of controls, because I had to find some things through just trial and error. Like in World 3, for example, I did a kick on an enemy. I didn't learn that until World 3. And that was just me playing around with the controls, as I said before. But basically, Sonic Lost World just changes things up a bit. You know, there's a lot of comparisons to Mario Galaxy, but it also shares lots of other references to other platforming games in general. And if you ask me, that's never a bad thing, because this game still adds the Sonic kind of twist to it in terms of gimmicks and the speedish platforming. This game definitely slows down Sonic to the point where it's more about precision platforming and exploring, which I kind of do enjoy. I just think there should be a balance of both speed and platforming, along with some background exploration, as I'm doing right now. So this game also brings up a lot of old school references, both in terms of gameplay concepts, enemies you face, and just, you know, the style in general. Speaking of style, this game's presentation is just amazing, both in terms of graphics and music. I think it's the best looking Sonic game as of now. You know, I think this is definitely subject to change sometime, probably next year if they're planning to do another next-gen Sonic game. But as of now, it just looks, it's the best looking Sonic game. I haven't encountered any frame rate issues as well, which is a definite plus. The game is always running at 60 frames per second. In terms of music as well, it's not as quite as good in my opinion as the Sonic Colors soundtrack, but it's still pretty amazing. This first track in particular, Windy Hill Zone Act 1, I feel the same way about it as I did for Tropical Resort and Splash Hill Zone from Sonic 4. At first it didn't immediately catch me in terms of catchiness, but after listening to it a couple of times it got me pretty hooked. It's pretty... The soundtrack as a whole I enjoyed. I think some people aren't too fond of it, but for me personally, I enjoyed it. And here are the Wisps, coming back from Sonic Colors. Once again, they don't really explain why they're here on this particular planet, the Lost Hex, but hey, you know, why not? Because I kind of like I did enjoy the Wisps from Sonic Colors. However, I feel like the new ones that they introduced in this game, they kind of feel pointless and unnecessary. It's funny because the old school Wisps in this game, like the laser, the drill, the rocket, they're still fun to use, and they, in my opinion, still serve some sort of purpose. But the new ones that they introduce, one you'll see later in this part, they feel kind of pointless and unnecessary. Like, I don't know why it feels like, why did they have to add it in the game? Oh boy, here comes Minnie Mouse. Yes, I'll be the first to admit, well, not the first, but I'm not a big fan of Amy's voice actor. Like, I don't know why they chose, like, this high-pitched woman to do the voice for her. It just... Lisa Ortiz, you know, for the voice, 4Kids voice actor, it was way better than this, if you ask me. Like, granted, yes, she did improve slightly over generations, but that high-pitched, squealing, you know, that high-pitched voice, it just pisses me off. You know, and I generally don't complain about voice actors. I swear I don't, but, like, I really don't enjoy listening to her voice. As for Knuckles, he pretty much sounds like Dan Green, so I don't have any issue or complaint about him. Their roles in this game, though, Amy and Knuckles, they also feel somewhat pointless, you know. Amy's like the damsel in distress, while Knuckles is like the bro, do you even lift kind of character, you know. He just, like, complains to Sonic that he's doing a crappy job, even though he's not really doing anything himself. See, here's another, like, the old school references right here. The Badnik transformation. You're also introduced to the main enemies of this game, the Deadly Six. Right here is Zavik, the big brute leader guy. Also, bro, do you even lift kind of character. But as you can probably tell without even me explaining it, these characters, they pretty much share a kind of stereotype for each of them. As I said before, Zavik's the leader, brute kind of character. Right here we're introduced to Zazz, the kind of psychotic, weird, violent and aggressive type of character. He also has a fetish over blue butts, as you'll tell throughout the game. He personally loves Sonic's butt for some reason. Just wants to slap that blue butt, whack it real good. But anyways, here's the first 2D level in the game. Like with Colors, Generations, Unleashed, this game changes from both 3D to 2D sections. I know people are going to ask me this right now, what do you prefer, 2D or 3D? I'm fond of both of them. In my opinion, it really depends on how the level design. For Lost World, I guess, though, I'd say around 80% of the time, I usually enjoy the 3D sections more than the 2D sections, but they still work fairly well. Not to the point of the classic games, but for what it's worth, it's still good. And here's one of the new Wisps, as I was talking before, the Asteroid Wisp. Basically, what this Wisp does is it collects debris every time you smash into something, and it makes your jumps bigger, like I am doing right now. This Wisp is actually somewhat similar to Frenzy from Sonic Colors, just less fun in my opinion. I mean, I'd rather play as a big, giant purple Pac-Man thing than, you know, a little raisin purple asteroid wisp. But the reason why I feel it's kind of pointless is, the first reason is that it's only used in 2 levels, and that other level I'm going to be showing later on in this part. And second, it's just, the only purpose it served, really, was to get that one red ring. Like, other than that, it doesn't really serve any other purpose. So here's the first boss of the game, Zazz, as mentioned before, the blue butt lover. He's pretty easy, I'm not gonna lie. Actually, all the bosses, for the majority of the game, are pretty easy. And I always let the first boss slide because, you know, it's the first boss. But, you know, I was expecting a bit more challenge toward the later parts of the game. Look, he's already out in just 2 good hits with the homing attack. Basically, in this game, you can somewhat charge your homing attack, but not really. In the sense that all you have to do is wait for the lock-on cursor to flash to 3 times to white, and essentially all you have to do is press the homing attack button, and you'll be at a supercharged homing attack. And with Zazz and the other Deadly 6 members in particular, you can just generally finish them off with 2 or 3 good hits to the face, and boom, they're dead. So here right now the game's introducing the somewhat iOS mission style missions in the game. Basically, this can range from like collecting rings, defeating enemies, to more complex stuff like not getting hit in a zone or defeating a boss without getting hit like Zazz. But like I said before, I'll cover that on a way later part. I actually want to address something that doesn't really apply to me in terms of when I first played the game. But apparently, there was actually a time where getting 100 rings didn't grant you an extra life. There was actually a patch for that I had to download when I first played the game. And that actually sounds pretty ridiculous if you ask me. Along with there's other things that affected too, like before you had to use motion controls to activate the wisps. There was no other way around it. And if you know me, I love motion controls, but that would have really sucked to have to go through that. I feel that there should always be like a choice between motion controls and just using the buttons. As long as they have a choice like that, which they did for the patch, I have no problems with stuff like that. As long as people have the choice to choose between the two. So, granted, it was kind of stupid that it wasn't kind of like common sense to Sega at first glance, but at least they didn't leave it to just die and leave the future players to get frustrated using those kind of mechanics. So good job on you guys, Sega. Granted, it should have already been in the game, but at least they went back and fixed their mistakes, which in the end is what truly matters. I don't know if you guys can tell, but another cool aspect about the game is that depending on what level you're playing, sometimes the music would change to fit more of the scenario. Like for example, in Windy Hill Zone 3, this one right here, when there's a rolling ball sequence, the music would change to fit more of that mood. But yeah, that was a pretty cool aspect that Sega added into the game. Of course, you'll see as we progress that a lot of other levels will share that similar aspect to it. So I guess now I'll dedicate the rest of this level to talk about the parkour system. Basically, as you know, the boost is gone in this game, and it's now replaced with what they call the Parkour engine. And basically what this engine does is it allows Sonic to run across ceilings, to climb up walls, to do wall jumps. Granted, he could do wall jumps before, but now it's much more free in the sense that you don't need to be on a pad to do it this time. So basically what the parkour system does is that it innovates, it encourages exploration basically, to get around new areas, to find secret paths. But of course not very many people like the parkour system because it also encourages more of a slower platforming style, which not very many people like. And maybe I'm a bit biased here, but I still slightly prefer the Generations and the Color engines in comparison, because those games still encouraged speed along with really quick platforming. You just had to be a little bit more skilled at dodging and evading traps. In this game, it's still likewise. You can go pretty fast in this game. You just have to put more dedication to memorizing the routes and taking the secret shortcuts and all that stuff. Now, something else this game added was also the ability to equip items anytime during a level. Once again, I didn't even know this until very late in the game. These items range from giving you rings, having the regular shield, and also the lightning shield that collects rings. Basically, it allows you to get through the level easier. But generally, I didn't find myself having to rely on it too much. It's just something, you know, if you needed an extra boost or you needed help, it was a little small thing. Oh, low blow there, Eggman. It's not like you were Mr. Popular back in high school. Well, actually, maybe he was, but probably for all the wrong reasons. You know, the Deadly Six, their character designs, they remind me of somewhat a mix between Skylanders and Monster Inc. rejects. I love this line by Sonic, by the way, right here. I love how Eggman has so much faith in Zazz. He obviously didn't see the battle that took place like 5 minutes ago in Act 2. But generally, that's what happens. You can pretty much tell the format of the game as soon as you do the first world. Basically, the first, there's 4 zones in each world. In Act 2 and 4, there's a boss fight. It's very similar to Sonic 3 and Knuckles in that sense. Because in Act 1 and Sonic 3, you would face a mini-boss. And in Act 2, you would face Eggman, generally. Here's Windy Hill Zone 4. This is actually one of my favorite earlier stages in the game. I just wish the 3D portion was a bit longer. But anyways, one move I forgot to mention that I've been abusing like crazy is the spin dash. They brought it back from the adventure games. It's basically a huge essential for speedruns. Definitely we're going to need that for the S ranks we'll be doing very, very later on. But basically, you can do a spin dash just by pressing it once, and then as soon as you get max speed, press it again to keep it going. Once again, the game didn't explain that, so I just had to play around with it myself. But it definitely keeps the pace going. Love this little rendition of Windy Hill right here. Some enemies in the game, as I mentioned before, most of them tend to be old school badniks, which is a real nice throwback to the classic games, but there's a few new enemies that have never been used before. Some are the sheep right here. Basically, there's 2 types. One are the white sheep, which if you jump on them, you basically get a little jump boost, but there's also the red ones, which get pissed off if you get even close to them. Basically, if you touch them, they'll bounce you around more like if it was Sonic Spinball than anything else, but they don't actually hurt you, which is kind of weird, but hey, I'm not complaining about that. So for every level where you fight a boss, you'll always get dialogue from the Deadly Six with random lines. To my surprise, some of these lines are actually pretty funny, depending on which member of the Deadly Six you're facing off against. Personally, the script writing for me in this game, it's pretty much the definition of hit or miss. You know, some things are actually pretty funny and caught me off guard. But then again, there's some pretty lame jokes and some really random character personalities that just pop out of nowhere. Mostly with Tails that you'll see throughout the game. But generally, it's 50-50 on that in that regard. And right here is the last time we'll ever have to do the Asteroid Wisp in the game. As I said before, this is the last time you'll ever have to play as him. Well, actually, yeah, I lied, because we're going to have to do some missions with him. Because unfortunately they dedicate like 5 or 6 missions to one separate Wisp, which is really stupid. At least for the Asteroid Wisp, I mean, you only use it for 2 levels. Why do you have to go that length to, you know, make so many missions for it? But generally, of course, to do a 100% run, we need to collect all the red rings. For those who don't know, who haven't played Colors or Generations, generally red rings tend to unlock something. In Colors, they unlock the arcade machines, which unlock Chaos Emeralds, and in Generations, they unlocked concept art or skills you can use throughout the game. For this game, they unlock circuses, which are basically bonus games, as well as they also, if you collect all 20 red coins, rings in a level, you unlock 1 Chaos Emerald for that world. So there's 7 main worlds and 7 Chaos Emeralds. You know, I wonder what you unlock after that. But that'd be a spoiler alert, I guess, so I'm not going to mention it. Also, I have no idea how Zazz is catching up with Sonic. Now, it seems these days almost anyone can catch up to Sonic. You know, Sonic's speed is no longer a trademark. Anyways, here's the final boss fight with Zazz. And, to be honest, it's actually somewhat easier than his first boss fight. You know, there, boom, he's dead. Yeah, it's hard to even consider that a boss fight, or even a mini-boss fight. Generally, 2 hits, that's kind of pretty pathetic. But yeah, we're done with Windy Hill Zone now. We got all the red rings, so we got the very first Chaos Emerald required for unlocking something.
I built a TV out of paper clips. Yeah.
Nice to see the tornado back, even though it's kind of been in recent games. See, I don't mind this kind of Tails, like his personality right now. Because in the old games, he used to just suck up to Sonic and be like, "Yeah, Sonic, I'll do anything you want." But in this game, and like recently, he's been more confident in his abilities, and you know, he doesn't just suck up anymore. He has a bit of sarcasm, which I don't mind. But to some extent in this game, he goes a little bit too far. But that's going to be a bit later in the game, as you'll see. So boom, another circus unlocked, and I'm going to just showcase that really quickly before ending this part. There's one of the Chaos Emeralds. That's the only emerald that should be its exact color. So here we unlocked one of the items. Just a normal shield that I'll probably never use once in the game, to be honest. Not gonna lie. And we also unlocked Desert Ruins. Next zone. But okay. Let's see what else Omochao needs us to do. Alright, so these circuses, they're basically bonus mini-games. There's 3 different types. The first you're seeing right here is the trampoline, where you basically have to bounce Sonic to collect the animals. Basically, why you need to collect animals is for 2 reasons. One is because for Zone 4 in each world, there's a certain requirement of woodland creatures that you need to have before you can progress. So that's one reason you need to collect them. And second, this is more for completionists like myself. You're going to need them to unlock some of the pointless RC car devices and its upgrades. So I recommend grinding for those stupid things whenever you can. But anyways, guys, that'll be it for this part. Stay tuned for part 2, where we will take on a new Zeddy and a new world in Desert Ruins. See you then.